We're talking about a medical condition. This is something that has been thoroughly researched for many decades. The American Pediatric Association, American Psychological Association, and many other national and international bodies agree that the risks are pretty minimal.
It hasn't been it's being thoroughly researched now, but the trans thing really only got popular a few years ago.
I came out as trans and started my medical transition almost 13 years ago. I've been in rooms full of trans people. This isn't something that's new. The problem is that it's just in a media cycle right now.
All right. I feel like I read some studies that said otherwise, but I suppose I'll give you that. It's altering for good when you go through that. I do know that.
That's not true. Like an anti-androgen, it stops the production of testosterone in your body, but the moment that you stop, your body will produce testosterone again. I was on puberty blockers as a teenager, so like I know that's how it does work. Like the moment that I would stop the blocker, I would just be going through male puberty.
All right. I suppose I'll look into that more then, because I'm not too well versed in that, but I know I just read something. I forgot exactly what it was. It said otherwise, but fine, I'll give you that.
Like, he mocks the idea of hate speech and won't moderate hate speech in his own chat when they are telling me to kill myself. You can call it an edgy joke if you want. It's not a joke, it's cruel. Like, the punchline is that it's cruel.
I think, yeah. I don't think that they're, like, intending for you actually to do that, but I do think it's a little over the line. But again, that's sort of like the free speech thing where Augie, like, he never told his chat to do that. He never said that he liked it. It just, like, happened, and he supports free speech, and that's technically free speech. So I think...
it's specifically hate speech. I don't understand. Do you think hate speech doesn't exist? Or it's just... I want to know what the difference is, I guess, between what free speech and what hate speech is.
Well, free speech is any type of speech, and I think the issue with hate speech is that there's no real definition. Like, I could say it's hate speech because I hated it, but...
I don't think that's true. There are actual definitions of hate speech, definitely legal definitions of hate speech. Like, for instance, yeah, hate speech is defined, well, they define hatred first. An emotion that, if exercised against members of an identifiable group, implies that those individuals are to be despised, scorned, denied respect, and made subject to ill treatment on the basis of group affiliation. So, like, under that definition, spamming 41% at me, like specifically telling me to kill myself because I'm trans, is definitely hate speech. Like, it's pretty clear cut.
By that definition, then yeah. But...
Yeah, I feel like I don't know, it's like you're going to an art museum and looking at abstract art and just coming up with your own interpretation of the things that are actually happening.
Well, I guess that would be a difference in our ideologies then, to where I think that all jokes are basically the same because of the intention of the teller.
What is your ideology?
The point of life is humor. If it were, it's not love, because that's something we're tricked into thinking will be long-lasting, but it's really just short-term. With humor, we acknowledge that sort of happiness is short-term, and we can move on, and that it can easily be brought back at any time of the day, and so we can experience it as much as we want. That's what brings us the most happiness at the end of our lives.
That was a great answer. Hello, Colton.
So yeah, I was just saying, I basically, I genuinely didn't want to talk about this before. Like, I just wanted to move on from it because I feel like I said everything I needed to. But he left a lot of stuff out. First off, one of the things. Okay, that's really loud. I don't know why someone's doing that outside. But one of the things, or one of the people that told Tipster that I was suicide baiting actually didn't tell him that at all. And that was Hannah Animal. She told him that I had a real attempt because March of last year, I did make a real attempt on my life. And she was involved in a wellness check that was called on me. And as she was trying to get the wellness check called, he was like in her ear telling her that I was baiting and that it was fake. I don't know why he thought he should have done that, but whatever. So he, luckily she ignored him, and I was in the psych ward for a few days, but I got better. He, then what happened is last October, I was talking to this one girl, and she was, I guess, friends with Tipster, which I didn't know at the time. I was fine with Tipster then. I thought he was fine with me. I eventually found out, maybe couple weeks ago now, that he was telling other random women about this stuff, even when I wasn't talking to them. But yeah, so he was framing this like attempt of mine and saying that it was like bait when he knows that I have a real history of this stuff. And when I stopped talking to this one girl, she like came out a week later. She blocked me on Twitter, and then a week later, she came out and said that some larger influencer, who later turned out to be Tipster himself, was telling her that I was a baiter, and then she decided to like pile that onto me taking a sleeping pill one night to get high, and she said that that was all like baiting suicide to make her feel bad for me or something, which wasn't true because we hung out for call hours after, and I was just getting high. And then Tipster, I confronted him about this, and he was like, for the whole day, he was calling me paranoid. He was saying that he literally said way too paranoid. He was saying that he was being completely honest. He literally asked me who's, and then the person. And so I was like, okay, well, I felt bad for accusing him. And then a day later, she admits that it was him, and then I confront him about it. And then he, instead of like apologizing for it, he just says, yeah, I'm sure, I understand why you're frustrated, but I hope you can understand that I was just like warning my friend or helping my friend out by like telling them this false stuff that I had faked suicide attempts before when I haven't. They were real. And it's really, the worst part is, he was close friends with someone at the time as they were calling this check on me. She was telling him like she had the information from the police. It was real. I was in the psych ward for multiple days, and he still went on to say that it was all fake and I was baiting people. And then when I confronted him in chat and told him that he like destroyed his credibility, he was telling me like he was like mocking what I was. He was like mocking my suicide attempts.
Yeah,
or he was.
I'm sorry that you dealt with that. Like, I understand why you feel misrepresented. I don't think it's okay to, like, take jabs at people for their mental health issues. Like, for instance, like, that's something that I have had to deal with, too. Like, I tried to attempt suicide, and my friends stopped me, and I ended up going to rehab. And, you know, I'm constantly, to this day, being mocked by like the commentary community for this, with all of the jokes relating to meth and coke and everything, when it was a really serious situation. And I wish like mental health issues like factored more into this, because this affects everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then he comes on the stream and like leaves out all that stuff of how it was actually an attempt of mine, because you and I'm not blaming you for this, But you said like that he shouldn't have apologized, and obviously you made that statement based off of not knowing everything because of how he painted it.
Oh, for sure. I didn't know the full situation. I'd like to think that he wasn't trying to misrepresent you as much as he was literally on a lunch break and had like 20 minutes. But I didn't know. This is something I have no idea about.
Yeah, it's the reason I believe he was misrepresenting me is because he had like a lot more time of this call in, and he had time to clear that up and add those details, but he just didn't. But then apart from that, this is also why I was really frustrated. I'm not going to harp too much on Bo Blacks until it gets to the Augie thing, I guess, but this is why I was frustrated with him going after Bo Blacks for the like BLM song from 4 years ago, because he did this like 7 months ago now, and it took him 5 months to apologize privately, and it seemed like just so he could bring it up for a minute like on a stream a week later, so he could say like, oh, it's in the past, without actually like going through that middle section where he really owns up to like deals with the consequences of gaslighting a suicidal person and lying about their attempt and stuff. But yeah, with the Bo Black stuff, like that was 4 years ago, and he's like chastising him for it again because now it's magically bad again to him.
I mean,
even though he privated the video.
To be fair, he sang the BLM song at VidCon like last year or the year before.
Well, yeah, but even then, that's like, because the point is he's like chastising Bo Blacks for that whole thing again, and even if it was a year ago or a year before, like he did this stuff 7 months ago, and I feel like that's way worse than like a song. Because what this did, like, and not even just him directly, but also how that one girl was influenced, like it fucked up a lot of stuff for me. And like I have a lot of bad trust issues, like I already did before, but especially after all that. And because of a lot of what she was like enabled to do, and he still like has her as a mod and stuff even after like apologizing. He's still like openly talking to her. and there's like been no apology or anything from her, but it seems like she's trying to be cool with me, so that's confusing. Yeah, then there was a lot more fucked up stuff that happened with her, but that's the gist of what involves Tipster. Thank you for letting me
no
clear that up.
worries. I figured you deserved to be able to if Tipster, because he didn't tell the full story on that. And I definitely agree. There needs to be a bigger conversation about mental health in the content creation space, because it's not a joke, but it always ends up being used as a punchline.
Yeah, and I suppose I forgot this just real quick. That's okay. The last thing is I did accept his apology initially. We talked for like 30 minutes or so on his live stream, and it ended with me like just accepting it and moving on. And then Hannah messaged me like just a couple hours later, maybe an hour later or so, maybe half an hour, I don't know. But she messaged me saying like he lied about multiple things to my face in that apology, the live public one, because he apologized again when we called about it when this came back up. But he said that he couldn't apologize to Hannah privately because she had him blocked, but this was a flat-out lie. He had her blocked, and then so he just lied to my face about that as like an excuse to make a public PR statement, like I'm sorry to Hannah. And then Hannah called this out and tweeted it publicly after she DM'd me about it, saying that he was the one who had her blocked, and then Tipster saw this and then blocked her on his alt as well instead of addressing it. So that was really fucked up. I don't get what any of that was supposed to accomplish at all. Yeah, so that's basically it. We can talk about the Augie stuff if you want.
I don't really want to be honest. I just don't see what the point is in rehashing all of it.
Well, because I feel like there was a lot of stuff that wasn't communicated right. Like with the allegations that he's transphobic and stuff. Because I can tell you he's not. He's like, there are people in his community who are trans, and they're not like discriminated for it at all. Like the RFC community, it's just edgy, but like we make fun of every type of people, and it's sort of equal in that, and we also accept every type of people, so it's not actually any sort of like bigoted way. And like I remember Augie saying like he has personal trans friends in his own personal life. Obviously I can't speak for that, but like I believe it based off how the beliefs that he presents to hold online.
He wouldn't even tell his chat to stop dead naming or misgendering me, and his chat was spamming an acronym calling for trans death. Like,
yeah, obviously I don't agree with that, and I doubt he does as well. I'm like, we are, and even the people who are spamming that is like, they meme a lot. Like there are people who tell me to try killing myself again. Like the thing is, it's really just a matter of like them making edgy jokes. But when they type that stuff, I know that because I used to be like this when I was younger, but they don't think like it's seriously affecting. Like I think it's wrong, sure, but
how often do people in the RFC community tell you to kill yourself?
It's not often. I guess it's only when this stuff gets brought up. Someone said like I would let Colton die. I just like laughed at it because that's really all you can do. Because if you tell people to stop saying that stuff or you start banning them, it's just going to happen more because they're going to be more enticed to do it. So if Augie did try to censor that type of stuff in his chat, it would just backfire.
I don't believe that. You absolutely can moderate that. Because the audience is going to take cues from the streamer. If I say, please don't dead name or misgender me, and they do it, and you start banning people,
I suppose
they're not going to do it.
Well, they will do it. Like, obviously, it depends on the type of community in every situation here, but when you ask someone on the internet generally not to do something like that, and Augie also hosts, a big part of it is that he hosts like a free speech sort of platform, so he doesn't censor any types of opinions. The only time he bans someone in chat is if they say like it's something stupid that's almost meme worthy, but I don't know, it's weird to explain, but he like bans one person every blue moon like as a joke and then unbans them. That's really all that happens.
Yeah,
because it's a matter of, there's no set definition for like hate speech, and with how many people are typically joking or like just fucking around with each other in the chat, it would come down to, it would just get too messy to try to moderate all that. So, and with not trying to monitor it at all or moderate it, sorry, at all, there would just there's going to be inevitably less types of comments like that because people will like just sit back and think of, oh, what's something unique I can say. But when people are enticed to say something, whether it's like they're told directly to do it or directly not to do it, they'll do it anyways because the thing was brought up. Yeah, as opposed to if they just see other like cringe people in chat saying those things. Like if I told someone, "Don't tell me to kill myself, man," like they'll just get spammed because they think it's funny, and it's fine because I think it's pretty funny too. It depends on people's senses of humor, and that's why he doesn't really moderate his chat.
I guess when it's being called a joke, I'm struggling to understand. Like, they were defending Leafy, saying that there should be a trans holocaust, that they need to be rounded up into camps. What's the punchline of a joke like that?
I feel it was the exaggeration because I'm sure Leafy's like he might be kind of annoyed with the current like movement and how the activism is like on every corner of the internet right now, but the idea of like a trans holocaust, first off, even if he did say that, that's impossible, so he'd just be stupid for that. But it's very much like making fun of this idea that you can actually get rid of all of them, or that there can be a genocide, because there
like, is that impossible?
Well, I mean, in the United States, there's no administration that would like line up every single trans person in like a camp. Does that make sense? Because and this is pretty sure in most countries too, or at least most Western countries, where if someone comes out as trans, they would not be like have some criminal offense against them and like be sentenced to death for it.
I think we're misunderstanding how these sorts of things come about. It's not like it doesn't happen as just like a really sharp, all of a sudden process, but a slow, gradual process.
Well, I do understand that's how it works, but how would that come about in most Western countries in terms of a trans genocide? Like, who?
I think it would start with, I think it would start a lot with propaganda. A really popular one that was used by the Nazis, for instance, is invoking kids and trying to say that the Jews are corrupting the youth, and that you need to deal with the Jews so they don't corrupt the youth of society. And we see that a lot with what's going on with trans people.
Well, not really, because a lot of that comes from private citizens, but there's no government telling like shoving this propaganda. The government's doing quite opposite. They're accepting and promoting like transgenderism and homosexuality and stuff. Like they're very much for it. And I feel like even Trump's administration wasn't against it.
Do you think that genocide does not happen in the absence of government?
I'm sure it does, but there's not really a recording of how many trans people are being killed. Like, I'm sure it does happen, as it does for every group, for who they are, which there's just nothing to do about, like, again, private citizens who are that sick in the head.
I know you're talking about it on the federal level, but on a state level, there's absolutely a lot of politicians who are doing everything they can to remove trans people from public society. All you have to do is look at Ron DeSantis.
Well, what he's banned is I forgot if it's the women's sports thing, but other than that, it's the children getting the surgeries, which if you're like 18 and up, you're allowed to. There's nothing banning people.
It wasn't children getting surgeries, it was children being able to access hormones, but he also banned adults from being able to access hormones through insurance companies.
Well, okay, if he did ban that for adults, then I suppose I disagree with that. But the idea of children on hormones, it'll mess up their bodies in a way that gets into a whole debate. But I mean, I suppose even if we were to acknowledge that was bad, that doesn't stop, like that doesn't prosecute trans people for the crime of just being trans. And,
it does,
them to death for it on a mass
because when you start to agree with that line of argumentation that the trans youth should be denied healthcare, you're arguing that a minority group should be denied healthcare. And you're not looking at the actual data behind it when you make those kinds of arguments. The rate of
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, the rate of detransition is incredibly small. In one study that I saw where they were doing like 30,000 follow-ups over the course of a 15-year study, the detransition rate was at 0.47%.
Well, I still have to look into those studies. I know that it's still ongoing, and so that's why I'm very, very hesitant to involve children in that, because if it's an irreversible procedure, and I know that even if there's like a small chance of a child growing up and they made like a decision that they regret, like it's permanently scarring to their body forever, and there's no way to get out of it. Like there are people that I know who wished that they had, or when they were a child or a minor, they wished that they could have done that. But now as an adult, like their parents prevented them and they're relieved that they didn't go through with it because it wouldn't have been permanent. And it was just like a passing thing. I feel like a lot of what's also not being looked at is how many misses there are in like children who have that sort of ideation and then decide, or they either aren't able to access it, or they decide at the time not to go through with it, and then as adults, they're much more thankful that they didn't.
This is the
Because
point
there's
of
always the option.
This was the point of
Sorry.
puberty blockers in the first place. To be able to halt the process of puberty to give people a long enough time to decide before irreversible changes could happen to their body one way or another.
Well, don't the trans surgeries take care of that in general, though? Because then what would be the point of getting surgeries if you weren't on puberty blockers?
No, the surgeries they do not fix everything that happens. There's a lot of irreversible changes that do happen.
See, that's why I just don't like the idea of kids being on that stuff, because the kids make random decisions all the time.
I'm talking about puberty, like natural puberty. Puberty irreversibly damages people.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're denying a trans kid the ability to do blockers because you're worried about that off chance on the like 0.47% who end up regretting it, they're going to end up having to be forced through a puberty that they shouldn't be going through. And they're going to spend thousands and thousands of dollars doing surgeries to try and alter themselves to fix the problems that never should have happened in the first place.
Don't you need to have gone through puberty as a male, though, to get the female reassignment surgery between the legs?
No.
Well, or I mean, you don't need to have gone through it to get the surgery, but I mean, like, it would be like you need more tissue there to actually work with. Because I remember there was the I forget the name, but there was the 12-year-old who was put on blockers
you're talking
until
about,
they were 18.
You're talking about Jazz Jennings, I believe.
I think so.
But
and then when they were 18.
Yeah, she was able to have the surgery. They were just taking tissue from other parts of the body.
Yeah, but then that killed her.
Oh, you're talking about the one medical complication?
Because they were given the puberty blockers, and then when they were old enough to consent to the surgery, they had the surgery, and it was taken from other parts of their body, and then it killed them because there was so much that had to be taken.
Okay. 1 second. Because this brings up an interesting question to me. So, like, your argument is that in the off chance, like, anyone who may have a bad complication, no matter how small the amount of people, it means that they shouldn't proceed with something like this.
Well, my point here is the puberty blockers really serve a net negative if people end up wanting to go through with the surgeries. Because there's no, like, I don't, like, there's no listed, what's the word? Like, there's no listed advantage if you take puberty blockers, at least that I've heard, and then you get the surgery when you're older.
Because it's not just that one surgery. Your voice also deepens, you get broader shoulders, your hips don't end up developing as broadly. Like, there are so many different things, even down to skull shape, that they can't do a surgery to change.
Yeah, but I don't see what would be... I mean, I guess at that point that would be personal modifications that someone wants to do with their body, but that really shouldn't be given to them as children. Like if they're older, then they can find ways to do that with hormones or whatever.
We're talking about a medical condition. This is something that has been thoroughly researched for many decades. The American Pediatric Association, American Psychological Association, and many other national and international bodies agree that the risks are pretty minimal.
It hasn't been thoroughly, it's being thoroughly researched now, but the trans thing really only got popular a few years ago. If even that. For the last few decades, it's been looked at here and there, at least from what I've seen, unless there are tons of articles that I've skipped.
I came out as trans and started my medical transition almost 13 years ago. I've been in rooms full of trans people. This isn't something that's new. The problem is that it's just in a media cycle right now.
All right. I feel like I read some studies that said otherwise, but I suppose I'll give you that because it isn't really too effective on this.
So I guess there's a thought experiment I wanted to run because I'm interested in this.
All right.
If and let's just say that, let's just, for the sake of it, if 218 trans kids died having, like, if 218, like, trans kids died going on puberty blockers, and remember, this is hypothetical.
Yeah.
Out of 71 million of them, do you think that would be too much of a risk?
I think only if puberty blockers have no positive effect that could affect like them as adults, which is what I see right now. So I'd say yes.
You'd say it's too much of a risk?
If there's no positive that it could offer, because the only positive is to appear more as the opposite sex when you're older and when after you get the surgery and stuff. But the issue with that is that it causes many more complications if someone decides not to transition.
I mean, it is, because we're talking about gender dysphoria. But I want you to know that 218 deaths out of 71 million people is the rate at which patients in the United States since the 1950s have died from having root canal surgery.
All right. Well, yeah, I like I said, if it's a procedure or if puberty blockers are something that give someone like if they actually have a positive effect, then I'd agree that they are very much that it wouldn't be too high of a risk. But that said, there's no positive outcome, at least in my opinion. So I think we just disagree there until more science comes out.
I mean, the positive outcome is treating gender dysphoria, which is, it is a medical condition.
Yeah, but that's something that as a child, you don't know if they actually have or if they're just playing pretend or if it's going to pass. Because it's like feelings can change for any reason at any time. And we don't know if it's permanent yet until they're actually adults and have the capability to understand the weight of what they're doing to their bodies and what they decide to go through with.
Absolutely, because puberty blockers don't leave a lasting impact. They don't actually damage the body in any way. The moment that you stop taking them, your body just does what it does naturally and you go through puberty. It's only meant
not if you're a teenager and you're in that phase and you block it out, because it's altering for good when you go through that. I do know that.
That's not true. Like an anti-androgen, it stops the production of testosterone in your body, but the moment that you stop, your body will produce testosterone again. I was on puberty blockers as a teenager, so like I know that's how it does work. Like the moment that I would stop the blocker, I would just be going through male puberty.
All right, I suppose I'll look into that more then, because I'm not too well versed in that. But I know I've read something. I forgot exactly what it was. It said otherwise, but fine, I'll give you that. This is just kind of cringe because we were talking about Augie and then we got into a trans debate.
I mean, that's what the whole thing was. That was the problem.
Well, I think that the issue was him hating trans people, which he doesn't. And this is what I think the big miscommunication was honest. Sorry.
Because that's part of my position. I think that it's transphobic to hold the position that trans minors should not be allowed access to trans healthcare. Especially when these arguments aren't usually coming from people who are well versed on the topic. It's not coming from doctors. A lot of these anti-trans arguments are coming from political pundits and Republicans who are using it as part of a culture war issue to rile their base.
Well, the issue here is you don't know if let's assume that's all true, right? We don't know if hypothetically, I sound like Ben Shapiro, but we don't know if Augie is actually misinformed or hateful. Like just by saying that he doesn't think kids should go on those hormones or puberty blockers or surgeries, whatever. And when he said like he was going mask off, he was not saying I'm going mask off as in I'm admitting that I flat out hate trans people. He was saying I'm going mask off and I'm done refuting like these allegations just because I'm going to be called it anyways whether I am or not. He did say at one point that he was, but that was because you were like asking him like you should just say it, and then he just said it to like get it over with, I guess. But when he said like going mask off, he was not talking about that admitting that he hates trans people, because like I said earlier, he doesn't. And when he said like he doesn't want kids on those surgeries, which I still agree with, I need to do more research and I will. But as of now, I wouldn't let my child do that stuff unless I look into it.
They're also not letting kids do surgeries.
Well, I've heard no, that isn't true, because there are, like you cited some surgeries earlier. There are kids
sexual
going
reassignment
for that.
surgery?
Yeah.
As far as I know, the youngest person in the world who has done sexual reassignment surgery was 16, and she had to get special permission from the Prime Minister of Germany. But for the most part, it's 18.
That's 16, still really low. But yeah, I'll look. I saw somewhere, because there are like adults who are it's just a whole thing. But yeah, but my main point here is that Augie, like, do you believe that he was hateful because he said that children should not go on those sorts of procedures, or do you believe that he is misinformed? Because I feel like assuming that he's hateful is just assuming the worst of somebody with really no reason.
I think that I can't tell what Augie actually feels because he hides everything behind irony, and he's not really interested in having honest conversation. That's my biggest issue.
I mean, I think the main issue with him is that he does want to have an honest conversation, but when he does, he communicates better like through irony and through humor. So he doesn't. That's why he's known as like the
for
worst
instance,
debater in the community.
When his chat of 1,600 people is spamming the acronym for total tranny death, and I call him out on it, instead of just, if he's really super free speech, he could have said, yes, this is what it stands for, and I stand by it because I believe in free speech. But instead of just saying, yes, instead of saying that, he just gaslit me and said, no, it stands for total tipster domination. You don't understand.
Okay, that was a joke. See, that was a joke.
Do you realize how it's not that funny to joke about something like that, especially given the current political climate? There are states right now where it's now actually illegal because of the cross-dressing laws applying to trans women for trans women to dress as women in public.
I didn't hear about that. I disagree with that if that's true, but I don't think that like there was no ill intent by him saying total tipster domination. I think he was just fucking around with that. He just wanted to come up with something funny. Because at that point you guys weren't like communicating anyway, so he just wanted to turn something into a joke. So I don't think that was actually malicious on his part at all. And then the people spamming in the chat, obviously I very much wish they wouldn't, but I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have said that because I'll entice more people. But
I mean, I was trying to communicate the whole time, but the problem is it just turns into blood sports. I don't think he actually wanted to have the conversation.
I don't know. I feel it could have gone either way, just depending on how he felt, and he just wanted to come in hot. So maybe. But when the other thing is, you were calling him transphobic like before that he like supposedly admitted it the other night, and but he kept asking you like, why did you believe he was transphobic before? And you kept citing what he said that night, but he was asking for an example before that because he only said that after you like were calling him it.
Question then: how do you know I'm trans?
How do I know you're trans? Well, because I've heard that you're a trans commentator.
Okay, but before this conversation that we are currently having, how did you know I was trans?
Because I've seen, well, I've seen clips, or no, I remember it was it a year ago or 2 years ago or something when you made a tweet?
You can't say anything before this conversation. You can't use as evidence for this.
What?
Because that's what Augie was doing, right?
No. What he was doing is he was asking you for an example of before. So
no, that's what I'm asking you right now. How do you know I'm trans? Not using an example from before this conversation.
No. Augie was asking specifically for an example from before that conversation.
I know what he was doing. I'm just pointing out why it's fallacious to try and do that when he had already admitted to these things, and his behavior during the day of was transphobic.
Well, where did he admit to these things before that stream?
I said during that stream, like in that conversation.
Well, yeah, but because you were calling him transphobic long before that conversation, but there wasn't anything to back it up before then. That was his point.
He already admitted to it. He admitted to it on the stream, and he wouldn't moderate the hate speech in his chat. You can see how I don't think that he needs to be a hateful person to engage in a form of systemic bigotry. And I'm not calling for him to be deplatformed as a result of it. He's probably eventually going to get himself deplatformed with the way that the trajectory of his career is going, but I have no part in that.
No, what's funny is that there was like some trans Twitter account that was like mad at him, and they reported his Twitter, and then someone asked them like, why did you do this? And then the Twitter account was like, oh, I forgot. That was ridiculous. Like, it's not, he doesn't do anything that's worthy of getting deplatformed. It's like things are like, he gets accused of things like in this situation of being transphobic when he's not. It's because you're bringing up the situations from that stream that night, but I'm asking specifically before then because you were calling him transphobic a lot before then, and it seems like you can't give an example as to why he was.
I've already have. Even the position of denying trans youth healthcare is transphobic. It doesn't have to come from a place of ignorance. I mean, it doesn't have to come from a place of being hateful. Most bigotry comes from a place of ignorance, not hate.
I don't think, well, if bigotry is just ignorance, I don't see what is bad about it then, if someone can be educated and not be a bigot anymore. Because he
refuses. Like, he mocks the idea of hate speech and won't moderate hate speech in his own chat when they are telling me to kill myself, specifically in a way that indicates I'm trans, like the 41% jokes and calling for trans genocide with the TTD meme. Like, you can call it an edgy joke if you want. It's not a joke, it's cruel. Like, the punchline is that it's cruel.
I think, yeah. I don't think that they're, like, intending for you actually to do that, but I do think it's a little over the line. But again, that's sort of like the free speech thing where Augie, like, he never told his chat to do that. He never said that he liked it. It just like happened, and he supports free speech, and that's technically free speech. So it's just a matter of letting people, like, if he were to censor it, right, then he wouldn't let those people like out themselves for their sick opinions. But they're like digging themselves their own grave, right? So it's best to let people do that, I think. But yeah, so I think
it's specifically hate speech. I don't understand. Do you think hate speech doesn't exist, or it's just? I want to know what the difference is, I guess, between what free speech and what hate speech is.
Well, free speech is any type of speech, and I think the issue with hate speech is that there's no real definition. Like, I could say it's hate speech because I hated it, but
I don't think that's true.
Well, you could say it's like any form of something, because I see this commonly, right? It's any form of speech where it's hateful against someone because of who they are, like some sort of prejudice, which I suppose I would agree with that, but the issue is that so many people like twist things. Like you said earlier, that it could, like, bigotry is partially because of ignorance. And so if hate speech is defined like its injunction with bigotry, and it could be just part of ignorance, then like speaking on something ignorantly isn't the same as being hateful. So there's so many like connections that can be made to the term hate speech where it just sort of loses all its meaning and it falls apart. And it's like it's best to say, like, give precise labels if you know that that's what someone means. Like if someone like is making fun of someone for being black or something, then you can say, like, yeah, that's racist. But to say hate speech, it's so broad and so loose that it's like YouTube's terms of service. It doesn't really mean anything. It's just there as like a loose guideline.
I mean, okay, so you were saying that, but there are actual definitions of hate speech, definitely legal definitions of hate speech. Like, for
instance,
yeah, for instance, in Canada, my home country, hate speech is defined. Well, they define hatred first. An emotion that, if exercised against members of an identifiable group, implies that those individuals are to be despised, scorned, denied respect, and made subject to ill treatment on the basis of group affiliation. So, like, under that definition, spamming 41% at me, like, specifically telling me to kill myself because I'm trans, is definitely hate speech. Like, it's pretty clear cut.
By that definition, then yeah, but that's also in Canada, where it's like subjecting someone to something. But on the internet, it's difficult to say that you're subjected to something when you could look away from the chat or block someone on Twitter or ban them from your chat or do whatever, like, to avoid that stuff. Because when typically I could see more of a concrete argument for hate speech existing, and if someone were to come up to you and like scream this stuff at you or something,
that would be
that's undeniably evil.
No, that would count as assault. That could either count as assault or intimidation and threats, but hate speech itself is a different thing.
Well, I mean, like, if someone were just, then let's say if someone were like whisper it calmly, or like Dumbledore, or like, just say it normally, then there would be more of like an issue there, because that's something that you cannot avoid because you're there in person. But if it's online, then you could just look away or block or whatever. And that's another issue that I have with the free speech stuff.
See, I can see where you're coming from with that, but that doesn't end up usually being the case. These things end up going off the internet, like getting doxxed, getting swatted. Even Jalen said that her parents are getting called pedophiles in person because of her, but because of her internet presence. So it's like these things definitely travel and they influence other people. And I think that's like,
but I mean,
yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Yeah, I mean, like, the direct action of like saying something online, like that can't really, like, to call something hate speech. And then also if someone like doesn't mean any harm by it, or like doesn't think of it as bad as it is, then hate speech also implies like that you're attributing like hateful intentions to them when they didn't mean that. So that's another reason why it's very loose. Especially on the internet, to sort of define something as hate speech. But let's say even if it all was, as much as I don't agree with it, as much as I'm very much sure Augie does not agree with it, Mr. Augie, that it's just part of allowing people to out themselves if they have crazy beliefs. And then if they don't, then they have, and if someone is, another thing I've just realized that I don't think I've heard anybody say before, but if somebody is given the platform to express those ideas and uses that platform to express like healthier ideas instead, and things that aren't that insane and crazy, like 41% stuff, then they're just showing that they're like a good person, and they don't actually believe that, even though they have the opportunity to say that. And so it just gives people an opportunity to show who they are. Along with speaking their mind, because censorship brings upon like very broad guidelines, which become stricter and stricter as time goes on.
Well, I definitely
I fucking hate.
Like, I definitely agree with you. I'm against government censorship, but I do think that hate speech laws specifically serve a big purpose. Like,
But that's government censorship. That's just one of the reasons I don't like the Canadian government.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, like, I understand where you're coming from, but there has to be a point where it becomes too much. Like, the last time I saw Canadian hate speech laws actually being used to put someone in jail was when they were running a Nazi magazine that was trying to paint the government as being run by a shadow Jewish cabal. And it's like, this is like something that is, you know, you laugh at it, it sounds silly, but there are people who take it seriously. Yeah. And just like with all the comments about trans youth, like, there are people who are getting death threats over it. I got death threats over it.
Absolutely. I don't support that at all, but that's really, like, that's why I laugh at it. Like, that's like, because when you laugh at someone for expressing crazy things like that, you take away all their power, because what they want is to intimidate other people for who they are. And so you laugh at that, like, okay, you fucking idiot. You think that someone's lesser of a person because they're trans or because they're black or Asian or whatever.
So,
but, like, it's funny that people think that, because it's low of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, like, why did you not have issue assigning malice to Tipster earlier in the conversation, but you have an issue with me assigning malice to Augie's behaviors? When his Tipster, like, and don't get me wrong, I don't think that's right. I don't like engaging in that kind of stuff. But in the case of Tipster, this is about, like, one individual, and in the case of Augie and not moderating hate speech, this is about millions of people that are just getting calls of action to their death in his chat because he has, like, this free speech hill to die on.
Well, because with Tipster, he actively lied about stuff and tried to, like, stop a wellness check from being called on me as the attempt was being made. So there's a lot of malice that's clearly there, as opposed to Augie allowing chatters to speak their mind, as toxic as it is in this chat, to contribute, even as bad as it is for some of them, to the conversation. That's another thing, by the way. His like highest tier mod, there are levels to this. His highest tier mod, Smaggledaggle, he was like banning the transphobic comments. So he and Augie like wasn't against that either. He was like, okay, that's because it's really just a free-for-all in his chat is the point. Like, there was a time where maybe for even more than a full year and a half, like, I would go in chat and say hi and get banned. Like, it's just whatever.
I don't think that's fair. Like, if you can assign malice to people, I should also be able to assign malice to people.
I mean, we can assign malice to whoever we want, but the reason I assign malice to Tipster is because he knowingly gaslit me for at least a full day and lied about this stuff.
Because, like, you're here to defend someone who is defending Leafy, and I'm sure if I asked Augie before this conversation, with outside of the context of this, he would probably defend it when Leafy said that he hopes that I overdose on heroin or that I should get hit by a car, you know?
I disagree with that. But with Leafy stuff, I laugh at that because it's like a parody of people who actually believe that stuff. Like if someone were to actually say that, like if they're serious, I laugh at them because, like, it's ridiculous. Like, why do you think that? And laugh, like I said, laughing at people takes their power away. It's when you, like, tell them that you're when you actively inform them that you're upset by it, then they believe, like, okay, this is working, I need to keep going through it. That's why, like, in school, like, kids are told to just ignore bullies, because if you give them the reaction they want, then they'll keep going. That's why I just laugh at these people, because they're ridiculous. Like, if you're racist, transphobic, sexist, whatever, I just laugh at you, because it's insane.
To be fair, the bar that you have set for transphobia, it's pretty high. It seems like transphobia can only be when someone is outright calling for trans people to die, but then even then, when people are doing it, which you're surrounded by, it's a joke. And it's like, how can you tell then? Like, if one person is serious in the chat, how the fuck do you tell when you are part of a community that encourages people to just call for trans people's death as a joke?
We laugh at them the same way. If they believe that, then we make them feel bad for their beliefs and let them know that it's ridiculous that they believe that. But as for the bar of transphobia, I don't think it's any sort of bigotry is limited to just death and like prejudice and all that.
Yeah, because like Leafy, he literally has an audience of groypers. He has Nick Fuentes on his stream all the time now. He's associating with Nazis.
I think, yeah, Leafy probably does have some crazies in his audience because that's because he's been around for a while. But also, a good majority of the people just want to like see entertainment and also like want a taste of 2016 because they missed that sort of era in
Ethan
their
Klein
lives.
has also been around for a while. He doesn't have Nazis in his audience.
Yeah, but he fucking sucks. So he does a lot of bad things.
Wait, so you're gonna defend Leafy? You're gonna defend people who call for genocide as a joke, but then Ethan Klein sucks?
Well, because Ethan Klein actively lies about other people, and he's been doing that for years, and he says like a ton of terrible stuff, like all the time, that's like meant to be taken serious. Leafy is like a troll who just wants to make fun of people.
See,
Ethan,
doesn't even
like genuinely tries to ruin lives. Sorry.
Nah, I don't even buy that, because it's like whenever I'm trolling, they don't like, Augie doesn't like it. Like, I didn't get Destiny banned, but I claimed it as a troll to piss people off, and he literally ran with it, and he still runs with it. The entire commentary community does, even though Destiny himself said I didn't. So it just really seems like a way to get out of accountability for saying heinous things, but they also don't extend that to other people.
I mean, I'd extend that to, like, if Augie said that, because he says he makes, like, a bunch of outlandish sort of jokes like that. The issue with policing jokes is that you don't really, if you don't know whether something is a joke or not, like, and it's just so ridiculous, like, that's what when the best decision is just to laugh at it. Because if the person meant for it to be funny and they didn't mean any harm by it, then they get to make someone laugh, make someone say better. If the person meant to hurt others, then they get laughed at and their day gets worse.
You can understand how, especially having a platform, broadcasting this kind of stuff and encouraging it can actually lead to people getting hurt.
Yeah, but I also don't like the argument that people are responsible for their audience, because as their audience grows, like, does their responsibility grow, and at what point does it reach a threshold of like, this is just, you can't account for like 200,000 people in the audience watching this stuff?
See, I agree with you on that, but I feel like you're also taking it to its extreme. Like, for instance, when I had a conversation with Keemstar, I was grilling him about the time 3 or 4 years ago now, when he asked his audience to brigade Ethan Klein on Twitter and spam death to the Jews at him, which I didn't think was okay, so I call him out on it. And he tried to use PewDiePie as an example when he paid some people to like hold signs saying Hitler did nothing wrong. And he was like, oh, this is an edgy joke that he did, it didn't do any harm. But following that incident, the Christchurch massacre shooter ended up booting up a live stream and saying subscribe to PewDiePie before he killed 17 people in a mosque. So it's like these actions have consequences. Like when you are encouraging this among your audience, and Augie was willing to admit to that in an earlier conversation. Like if you say these kinds of things, someone in your audience, and you'll never know who, is going to end up taking it seriously. That's why I'm scared about Leafy calling for trans people to be rounded up.
If that was his point, then I have to say I disagree with that one. But as for the insane shooter person, like PewDiePie did not make that person a shooter, and he didn't make them anti-Semitic based off of like doing a Hitler salute. Like that does not turn someone into a Nazi.
He didn't turn into a Nazi.
That person was sick.
He was sick. He didn't get turned into a Nazi because of PewDiePie. He just was a fan of PewDiePie doing those actions in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. At that point, it's really just coincidental, and any ties that could be made between the two things to be linked are really just not really affecting anything.
I think the problem then is like making content that explicitly appeals to a white nationalist audience.
He didn't though, because that again, that's the point of that joke is like making fun of Nazis. That's what most people do nowadays because like
Wait, what?
Nazis are so frowned upon in society that they just make fun of them. And
How?
I'm sure that's what that was.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know, it's like you're going to an art museum and looking at abstract art and just coming up with your own interpretation of the things that are actually happening. Because, like...
Well, we both are. I assume that's what this debate is that's all we can do is assume people's intentions based off their
Well,
actions.
they can tell you.
And to assume the worst is
but they won't.
Assume...
Like, with Augie, he could have diffused that entire conversation earlier if he was actually honest and willing to have a conversation, but he wasn't. He didn't want to have the conversation.
Sure, but with the PewDiePie situation, he clearly said afterwards that it was a joke, and the whole video was framed as a joke anyways. It was like, why? I can't remember the details because it was years ago, but it was like to the extreme.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I don't think a lot of this stuff is jokes as much as it's just dog whistles.
No, the PewDiePie is known for.
I'm not talking about PewDiePie. I'm talking about like
Augie?
all of this in general. Because like, let's say Augie is like, he actually thinks like it's just a joke, right? There are lots of people. The first time that I saw TTD was on a Kiwi Farms thread where they were legitimately calling for transgenocide. Joshua Moon has explicitly called for transgenocide. If they're part of his audience, they're not joking when they say that. But allowing it to be encouraged, you're encouraging the people who are legitimately calling for transgenocide.
Yeah, but that's not even okay. First off, if people did believe that, then they'll find any reason to excuse those sick beliefs. That's just human nature in general. You want to find it's just confirmation bias. You want to find something to affirm your beliefs. And most people, I like to believe all people with an open mind don't go to those extreme places of hatred. And if someone is like on the fence, they aren't going to see PewDiePie doing like a Hitler salute and decide that they need to shoot a bunch of Jews. Like,
oh, sorry, it was
the disconnect is
Muslims.
far too far. Or Muslims. Wait, so how is that related to the Nazi thing?
He brought it up as the example. Keem did.
Oh, I don't know what the fuck Keem was on about then. But yeah, I also disagree with I think Keem saying that he may have had joking intentions, but regardless, I do think that was too far. Saying that to a Jew, that was too far.
Yeah, that's just like the problem with a lot of this stuff, right?
Yeah, and I think if people can people should acknowledge if they make jokes that don't land. Like, I guess with the you and Tipster, the fake fallout, because like you guys said, I believe you said that was intended as a joke, right? And so, but Tipster also said stuff about like his mental health and how it fucked him up and he needed to take a break from Twitter. Like, I'm not gonna say that's like a dog whistle on people's mental health or anything. I just think that it was a really terrible meme that was communicated badly and shouldn't have been done.
I feel like it's disingenuous. Like, after the things that your friends have said as supposedly jokes, like calling for genocide of trans people, like defending that as a joke, calling for transgender holocaust, the TTD thing, defending misgendering and dead naming, like we're defending things that are explicitly hate speech, even on the platform that he's on. But then Tipster saying, I need to take a mental health break as part of a bit that we were doing that really hurt no one. Like, how do you make that claim?
Well, I guess that would be a difference in our ideologies then, to where I think that all jokes are basically the same because of the intention of the teller. Obviously, they're not the same in how they impact people and how they could do that, but they are the same in the intention of wanting to make someone laugh or wanting to make
what is your ideology?
The point of life is humor. If it were, it's not love because that's something we're tricked into thinking will be long lasting, but it's really just short term. With humor, we acknowledge that sort of happiness is short term and we can move on, and then it can easily be brought back at any time of the day, and so we can experience it as much as we want. that's what brings us the most happiness at the end of our lives.
That was a great answer.
Thank you.
I mean, for me, like, I definitely think like the point of life is just like the friendships that you make, the relationships that you have. So much of this shit doesn't matter, but
definitely, and they bring about lots of humor when they're good.
Yeah, for real.
And that's also how people make friendships and relationships easiest, is through humor. And so that's sort of why I very much, like, I won't ever have anyone in my house who seriously advocates for transgenocide or anything like that. But if someone makes that as like jokes that make fun of people who genuinely believe terrible things like that, then sure, because it's also a way of communicating genuine beliefs through humor. Is if you exaggerate.
Okay, but that's not the context in which it was being said. When I was on Augie's stream, they were spamming 41% in chat when I was in there, specifically because I was there. They were saying TTD specifically because I was there. Like, I didn't feel supported by this. Like, I didn't think they were making a joke about how stupid transphobia is. These aren't people that like me.
I could see where you're coming from there, yeah. It is probably mean-spirited, yeah. That's actually a good point, is the fact that you are on good terms with them. Yeah, I'll concede there.
I would also be hesitant if someone like chuckled after saying something really fucked up, like I want to put the trans people in camps. Just having that there, being able to say this is a joke, because then it makes it really hard to tell what is and what isn't a joke.
I mean, I don't know if it's gonna sound cringe or something, but I have autism, and so I can't really tell, like, it's difficult to sort of portray what I mean in certain sentences. So if I say a fucked up joke, I've taught myself over the years to do like a fake chuckle after it to sort of indicate that I don't actually mean it. And I feel like that is an indication of if someone's joking or not.
Oh, fair. I mean, I just try and analyze, like, the group behavior, because I feel like that's something that's missing in a lot of the conversations where, like, for instance, and we can talk about the Nazis as an example. There were a lot of individual people that supported the Nazi party that I'm sure were actually very nice people who were nice to their neighbors and nice to their coworkers and were just raising families. But that didn't stop everything that happened or the things that they supported. Right?
Yeah. I mean, again, that's assuming that they genuinely believe that stuff, though. Because like I said, I don't support anybody who does believe that stuff. I don't like want them to like die or anything serious, but I think it's really bad that people hold those beliefs, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
Even though it's bad ever.
And I do want to. Oh, I'm sorry for interrupting. Sorry.
No, you go. You got it.
Oh, and I do like really want to drive the point home, just because it's people often misinterpret what my intentions are. I don't care if Augie, for instance, wants to make fun of me. Like, he can make fun of me as much as he wants. It's specifically the things that are poking, like, it's the transphobia and just like how much he doesn't care about it being a thing. I get bothered by them making fun of my struggle with addiction as well, because it's very much a similar situation to your suicide attempt. But I'm also not really going to, I'm not going to stop them. I can't really keep them from doing what they want to do.
Yeah. I think that's just sort of the bit where we agree on, is like not really being able to stop people from having these beliefs at the end of the day. So what we just disagree on is whether we should, or whether we would want to act in our chats. Because I do hold I share his belief in not censoring anybody, even though I hate, like, I did a couple charity streams like a year or two ago. I for the streams like those, and I do ban stuff where someone is actively trying to cause trouble for no reason, especially being prejudiced like that. But if it were like a general stream, then it's just a matter of allowing people to speak their minds, and if they're crazy, then people see them as the craziness that they are.
Yeah, I feel like there's two sets of rules that the commentary community plays by, because a lot of the stuff that they defend definitely wouldn't be seen as jokes by people outside of their community, but then stuff that most people do see as jokes, they get really strung up about it. Like I said about like the deplatforming Destiny thing. Like you were saying that it matters what the intention was, and the intention was just to troll. But Augie went as far as saying that I should be homeless over this. You know? They have a lot of leeway for their own thing, but their main job is critics, right? That's all they do, is they criticize other people. But when they get criticized, they go insane about it.
So are you against deplatforming then?
My position on deplatforming is that if people are using their platform in order to encourage hate speech, or if they're not moderating hate speech on their platform, yeah, they probably should get deplatformed.
Wait, does that mean you think Augie should be deplatformed?
I mean, he already was. I think that eventually... Do I think that he should get deplatformed? Look, I feel like this is a question that's going to put me in a bind. Because if I say yes to this question, he's immediately going to jump to, I am going to get him deplatformed, and I'm not about that. I'm not trying to get anyone banned. I don't care. I
don't think he'd think that, but it's just a matter of like thinking that he should be deplatformed because his involvement in commentary and the internet in general has been a net positive in terms of how he's like entertained lots of people and how he's brought awareness to serious situations. Such as my situation with Tipster, actually. Like, he's helped me with a lot personally, and others. It's not just a selfish thing.
I don't know if he did it, but Bo Blacks definitely agreed with someone on Twitter who said that both me and Jalen actually have made the world a more transphobic place because of how bad we are for representing the trans community, which is insane to me.
Oh, I saw that. What was it? You, Jalen, Natty, and Tipster?
Yeah, and...
Yeah, I remember that.
Which is... It's so fucking strange.
Yeah, because it was based off of the, you know, obviously the past 2 nights, or no, was it? No, it was just the one night of, yeah, the Augie stream. Yeah, but like Bo Blacks isn't transphobic either. He very much like does care about trans people and all that. He's been very vocal and outspoken for them, and he's very much like he's like the most supportive one in the whole group. And it's not like that's not saying anything, because Nick also is very supportive. Augie isn't very, I don't know if I said that weird, Augie, but he isn't very much like outspoken about it, but he's fine with people who are that, you know, like he's accepting. So they aren't like I know it seems like there are two sides to this, like you're the left, they're the right, but they're just very much centrists who are accepting of everyone for their character.
See, I don't know if that's actually true. Like, if a trans person wanted to be part of his audience and held the position trans people should be allowed to transition when they are minors, I feel like he would throw a fit about that.
I mean, he's friends with, they didn't get the surgery, but he is friends with a trans person named Taps and I'd say I was loose friends with them too, for a while. They were in the community for 2021 through 2022 for a couple of years, and they were like, they hung out a lot together. Taps was on a lot of his streams, and then Taps is really fun to be around and fun to watch. Out there doing all right, actually. But yeah, so that's like the main example I remember, and Augie not once like treated them any less than anybody else for being trans, or like said anything about being trans. They made trans jokes a lot themselves.
So wait, what did that have to do with the youth should be able to transition comment?
They were 16 through 17 by the time throughout the time that they were in the community. They weren't like in surgeries or blockers
Wait, are we
or
talking about
anything, but they were
Polis?
transitioning. No, not Polis. Polis is another one who was a mod for Augie till they did some crazy
But
things.
so both of the
But,
people that you just mentioned have left the community.
Yeah, but Taps still like tweets like once a month, and it's like some joking thing, but they're on good terms. It's just that they're busy with their personal lives. Polis left because Polis tried, I think, stalking Augie once to at VidCon. So those are two different situations, but in both situations, like, just for being trans, Augie showed no discrimination whatsoever. Like, he is a good guy. He doesn't hate people for things like that. I think he barely hates anyone, actually.
Definitely hates me, but that's fine.
Maybe. I don't know. I can't speak for him on that because the last debate was pretty heated, so I don't know. Also, Smaggle wants to come in to clear some things up. Is that all right? He's not gonna. I know he's like a troll, but for situations like this, he is gonna be.
I'm
cordial.
okay. I feel like we should probably wrap it up unless there's something that we haven't discussed.
All right. Oh, he actually just messaged me. Taps hasn't left the community. She's still here, just not as active. Okay. So they're still in the community.
Mentioning two different trans people who are okay with the behaviors that are going on, doesn't really prove a whole lot.
Well, I mean, it proves that he doesn't discriminate against trans people. Because he was friends with Polis, and I guess he's still friends with Taps then.
How would you define discriminate in this case?
Like, treat someone less, like, wanting to be around someone less, or just thinking of someone less for who they are and expressing it in terms of identity stuff, like race or gender, whatever. And he doesn't do that. He treats them as equals. He just makes edgy jokes, which they reciprocate actually a lot.
I mean, I've definitely.
Oh, and Jalen. He was friends with Jalen too, until they had a falling out, but it was not anything to do with trans.
He treats Jalen like shit.
Yeah, now he does, because they've had a lot of issues. But for like up until last year,
like they were like bullying and harassing the shit out of Jalen. They were like baiting Jalen into having meltdowns because they thought it was funny.
No, that isn't true.
I saw the clip. It was fucking horrendous.
Well, I'm sure there's one clip that made it look like that, but I've seen at least 5 streams where, and Jalen, please don't take this bad because I really have no issue with you, but Jalen's come on streams and like had these discussions where they genuinely try to talk with them and like give them advice and stuff, and then it ends with Jalen like rejecting the advice and like they always say like just take some time off the internet. Jalen says okay, I will, and then a week, not even a week, it's like a day later, like 12 hours, they're back, and then the cycle repeats. And so it's just an issue of them, like they got frustrated with Jalen, and then I remember it was Nick who got frustrated first, just like with Flamenco. He got frustrated and then started like making fun of Jalen, not for being trans or anything, but for being going through this cycle.
Right.
And then Jalen got mad, and then they got into arguments, and then Keem and Augie started getting like involved and being like, okay, well, this is true, like you do this, and then it just got worse and worse from there. Like they built on each other. It was never them like treating Jalen bad just out of the blue, because they were friends back when they were Jaden, and then they were like before they were trans, and then they remained friends throughout the trans thing, and then the cycle started happening, and then the fallout happened. So it was disconnected to that, and that's sort of my point. Is it's always based around how someone acts, not on who they like, how they look or how they feel.
I still feel like the bar is too high, because I feel like you can do transphobic things. You can act in bigoted ways without expressly hating someone.
Well, how I don't understand how he'd be acting bigoted then if he doesn't show any signs of treating someone less, because I didn't even say hating someone. I just said treating someone less for who they are.
I mean, he's like repeatedly called me out for supporting trans youth. He did the same thing for Tipster. He won't moderate hate speech in his chat, including calls for genocide, because all of the people doing it might be joking, but you can't tell because there's so much irony that it may well be a Nazi calling for that. Like, it looks the same thing. It looks like the same thing on Kiwi Farms that it does in that chat. There's no way to discern, and that's what's incredibly concerning about that kind of behavior.
Well, that's just a matter of not like if his chat does turn out to be joking, then censoring them for jokes is like a net loss. And again, if he tries to censor stuff, then people are just gonna want to say it. Like, it goes back to all of our, I guess, all my arguments earlier, where it'd just be a bad idea to try to do that. Because then there are a ton of people who hate Augie as well, like really terrible people, like doctors and stuff. And if they tried to like,
for sure.
If he tried to censor that, then all of his haters would come in and say that stuff and mean it. So it would just be worse. Because then you'd have more to censor as well, and it would just be a big clusterfuck, as opposed to just ignoring those people or laughing at them.
I mean, I completely disagree with this, and I think that he could have diffused the situation immediately. Like, if he's trying to say, I'm not transphobic, prove how I'm transphobic, he could have told his chat, don't do this. The very basic form of respect to be given to a trans person. But, you know, it's...
I mean, I suppose.
It's also, like, fine, in a way, because I can't control his actions. He will eventually get banned if he keeps doing this. And I want to say...
No, I disagree, he won't.
I gotta say now...
He doesn't mean anything bad by it.
That I have nothing to do with it, because I know that... Like, Jalen liked a tweet after his Twitter got banned, and Augie makes a 20-minute video blaming Jalen, saying Jalen's the reason. But Jalen didn't have anything to do with it. He's just... He knows that some trans account played a part, and he knows that Jalen is trans, so he's automatically implicating Jalen based on the group that Jalen belongs with, which that is transphobic. It doesn't need to necessarily be hate or hateful in order for someone to do something like that. I don't want to make people stop having fun and making jokes. I like an edgy joke myself every now and then. I just think that a lot of this stuff goes way too far, and when you can't differentiate between Nazis and people who are part of your audience, there's a really big problem.
Well, that goes down to if people like enjoy his stuff and genuinely hold those beliefs, like Augie's not affecting it at all. Like, if anything, he's mocking them and they don't know it, and it's going over their heads. So it's really the joke's on them.
When did he mock them?
Like when he makes those like insane sort of joke. I can't think of an example right now off the top of my head, but he does make a lot of insane statements that are clearly jokes. He doesn't, like I said, if he were to be like a hateful or a bigot or whatever, he would not actively hang around people of like all different types. He is very accepting. And I think that when you also, another thing is when like he has a bunch of trans people in his community, like Jalen or Taps or Polis, those three off the top of my head.
I mean, Taps is not active and tweets once a month. Polis is MIA. Jalen is definitely not part of that community.
I know,
anymore.
but I mean, I know, but I mean, like at the time when they were all like active in it, right, and they're all trans, like he was very much like they were very much involved as much as they could be, and there was nobody in chat who was saying like making mean remarks. They make those sorts of, again, I completely disagree with this, but this is because I'm just pointing this out because it's not a basis of actually like being hateful toward these people. I'm sure there are a couple of deranged ones who are, but when they make the sort of like statements like that, it's because they don't like the person because of how they're acting, which again, I'm being clear, I completely disagree with that still. I think it's way too far.
Oh, I get why
it's not a matter of... Sorry.
I get why they're doing it. I totally get why they're doing it, but it's still bigotry. Like, you can... Like, if my actions, if everything that he's saying about me is right, he doesn't need to go there to attack me. He doesn't need to let people attack me in that way.
That's a matter of his audience, though. He doesn't personally. He doesn't condone that or support it. He'll laugh if he thinks something's fucked up and believe someone's joking, but he only does that like here and there. And most of the time, he just ignores that sort of stuff in chat, because if you don't give something that like I said, it would be a lot worse if he actually acknowledged it and told people like, stop doing this, guys.
Has he ever explicitly tried to do this and then enforce that rule?
No, because that would backfire.
How do you know if he's never tried it?
Because, well, I know personally because I tried it once when I did some stream, and I didn't even have that many viewers, and it just fucked me over, because that's just the nature of the internet. Like, people will do the opposite of what they're told. That's like Internet 101.
Yeah.
So, like I said, the best thing to do is just laugh at it, and if someone meant to make someone laugh, then you make their day better for trying to make someone's day better, which is good. And if someone tried to hurt someone, then you laugh at them, make them feel bad. So they feel bad for making others feel bad, which is good. That's why laughing at something is the best.
Yeah, do you think, like, if Augie were to bring on, like, a black creator, it'd be okay for his chat to start spamming racial slurs at the black creator?
I mean, no, but I also don't think the trans things are okay. It's just a matter of if he were to, like, because the argument isn't, is it okay? The argument is, would it be effective to ban them and enforce that moderation? I'd say no.
I mean, I would say yes. Ethan Klein can have a live stream with 40,000 active users without anyone saying racial slurs or calling for transgenocide. You can moderate a chat. You're being told lies right now. Because
no, but Ethan also has a fuck ton more moderators, first off, and second off, he's cultivated a sort of a sort of audience who, like, is against free speech in general.
I am pro free speech. I'm just anti hate speech. There's definitely a distinction between these two things. You can be against people advocating genocide or saying things that would encourage those who believe those sorts of things without wanting people to generally be censored in the things that they believe.
Smaggle just messaged me. You have to tell Capples that has happened before. So I guess for something I wasn't around for, I guess Augie did try to... Smaggle, if you're watching the stream, can you DM me details? or can we add him and let him explain this?
I don't really want to, but is there any, like, other salient points that we haven't gone across? I do think this is a productive conversation. Like, this is what I wish I could have done with Augie, but I feel like there's just too much bad blood to have that kind of conversation. Though, I gotta say, like...
Hopefully you guys... Sorry.
Oh, no, just after this whole conversation, I definitely feel like you're being hypocritical by holding Tipster to such a high standard when you won't hold your own friends to that same standard. Who will defend things that are the same, if and worse, than what Tipster's done? Like, they'll definitely...
No, nothing was worse, because here's the thing, right? If people were saying this stuff about me in chat regarding to any sort of feature of mine, no matter what I was, I'd hold the same, like, belief if it's just people spamming things in chat. But Tipster tried to stop a wellness check being called on me while I was attempting suicide, and then he gaslit me about it and lied to people about it, and then went on this stream just now, months after supposedly apologizing privately and publicly, and omitted details to make himself sound like the victim. That's much worse than spamming 41% in chat. As bad as that
no,
is,
it's not.
Spamming that is.
That's a call.
It's not?
That's a call for genocide. You can't just say one of these things. Yes, it is. Using trans
They're not
suicide.
Seriously calling for genocide.
I don't think you would know when someone is or isn't because you're surrounded by people who are identical in their rhetoric to Nazis.
No, I'm sorry, but is saying 41% in a YouTube live chat is not, like, encouraging people to kill, to kill trans people. That's just no.
Yes,
that's not right.
Yes, it is. It's encouraging trans people to kill themselves. That's the point of the joke.
Well, okay.
It's a call for suicide. That's why they were spamming TTD alongside it, calling for total tranny death. That's
okay, but that's, again, even if somebody were calling for that in a live chat,
yes,
even if somebody were doing that, that's not the same as meticulously, like, trying. I'm not going to attribute the worst intentions to him, although I have my own beliefs.
Look, when
it's not the same as meticulously planning out this thing of a suicidal person, like, gaslighting them for months and trying to ruin their relationships and getting them Me Too'd and stuff.
When I had an actual Nazi fake my identity, steal my identity, have me swatted, waking up at fucking gunpoint and getting arrested. After all of that shit, all of your friends were the biggest people pushing lies about it. Like, they were pushing so many lies, and you can't deny that. They were even trying to say that there were no guns involved when the deputy chief of police of my city admitted that. Like, there's no way.
I don't know anything about that. I know Flamenco tried to deny it, but we don't care about anything he says.
Nicholas did as well on a stream with me, and I had to correct him on the record, but it didn't make them stop spreading misinformation and lying and generally trying to hurt someone who has already been through a lot. They just changed what they were doing. I don't feel like it's fair to hold Tipster to this standard while you're defending all of these people as your friends.
Well, if they did deny that, I feel like that situation is much different because they weren't directly involved. All they had to go off of was potential evidence.
You're right. They were just mocking. They were just mocking a trans person who could have died because they were.
Well, hold on. I don't agree with that. If they did do that, I don't agree with that. But I also doubt that they'd. It just doesn't seem like an Augie and Nick's character to do that. And this is from someone who knows them kind of well.
They were mocking the victim of a.
I'd have to see how they were. I'd have to see how they were mocking.
They were mocking the victim of a hate crime. Even on that call, with Nicholas bringing up groping, mocking me as a victim of a hate crime. And I'm not going further into that topic because I'm only talking about this with my lawyer since there's legal action in place. But you don't really have a way to stand for this. Just to hold Tipster to this standard while your friends are like this. You can hold your friends to that standard too, or you can not hold Tipster to
gaslit me about my suicide attempt. Maybe I'm a little biased because
I think it's
maybe we're both biased because it affects us in different ways.
I think you're being selfish, honestly.
I know,
because it affected you personally, you care, but if it doesn't affect you,
I very much looked at that situation from like a third person perspective. And I've looked at both of these from a third person perspective and imagining that I were the person like doing these things. And like just the amount of energy that it would take to type like a number in a live chat versus going like creating this narrative around someone for months and keeping it for actually better part of a year. Most of a year.
Yes, that's exactly what
completely different.
Your friends did with me.
Well, they weren't gaslighting
from
you.
March 25th, 2022 up until the present day, they have constantly spread misinformation and lied about my positions.
I mean, weren't you guys friends for a while?
No. I was on more amicable terms with them. But when
That's another thing.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Doesn't it sort of prove, along with everything else, that they aren't like transphobic if they were hanging out with you for a while, even after having drama with you? Like they were willing to squash it and still be cool with you.
No, I don't actually think so. I don't think they didn't really trust me that entire time, and we weren't really hanging out. Like they were still very shitty to me. The difference is that I was in active addiction, and then once I went to rehab, got clean, and was able to reevaluate my life, I realized they're not good people. I don't trust them. I don't think you should trust them.
It's not a matter of trust because I don't really trust. This sounds like probably like a cringe anime protagonist, but I have trust issues, so I can't really trust anybody. But I feel in my heart that they're good people because they've done a lot of good for others, and every conversation that I've had with them, public or private, and every position that they've held publicly, like it's never been out of any sort of malice or hatred for others. They do most of their main goal on the internet is to have fun and have a good time, and make other people enjoy it too. But they also do care about doing the right thing when it does matter.
This is the thing that always confuses me about them, I guess, where they simultaneously say, when pressed on their beliefs, we're just entertainers, We're just here for a good time, but they're consistently talking about politics, like throughout all of their content, talking about
Yeah.
trans people, which is a very politically charged topic, especially the topic of trans youth. What it reminds me of actually is Kiwi Farms, where in order to say that they did nothing wrong, oh, we're just a gossip forum, we're just talking about internet gossip. But then when they're not being pressed on their beliefs, they talk about how they're hunting down pedophiles and they're making the internet a safer place, where they use this as a defense in order to exculpate them from their actions.
Um, I I think because the main reason that they are like these are issues that they do certainly care about, but the main reason that they're on the internet conversing about them to begin with is for entertainment. Like the reason that they make streams and videos and talking about it, because they could just have Twitter. But a lot of it is for entertainment value and how they present it. And then there are some stupid situations um like when Tipster wasn't involved, my situation was pretty stupid, like for everything else. And then I guess the flamenco situation was pretty dumb, where he was like upset over a song. And there are other things where it's really just to laugh at those things, but then when serious stuff matters that involves them or people adjacent to them,
Mm-hmm.
then that's when it gets super serious, and that's when they like focus on talking about it. Like they do make jokes around it and about it, obviously, because like if you don't laugh at things, then it's life's just going to get depressing. But
Oh, for
they
sure.
do genuinely care about making it like doing things right, because they covered the tipster stuff, and like with me, and Augie's accused of milking Tipster, um and I very much disagree, because he found out about this only recently, like soon after that he had the conversation with Tipster. It's not like he had it in his back pocket. It was just a coincidence that he found it after. um and and we like talked about it, and he invited me on to explain my side of the story, and cover it all in great detail. And he asked Tipster about it too privately. Like they get all sides of every story that they can. um, so it's clear that they do care about this sort of stuff, and they aren't just here for purely entertainment value, but that is a big goal of theirs, because it just makes overall it'll make life better for a good amount of people, just to laugh at things.
Yeah, I definitely don't have an issue with making jokes, and especially edgy jokes. Like, I know better than anyone. I'm probably one of the few leftist creators who have been incredibly canceled by the left for making edgy jokes. Um, but I feel like there's a difference. There's, because as you said, like, the intent matters, right? And I don't know how you can make a joke that is about an entire minority group being killed without and some part of you having the intent that you would think it would be funny if it happened. Like, how do you
No, it's not about thinking it'd be funny if it happened. It's about the idea of someone holding that belief is funny.
see? I don't know. I don't think that's why they're doing that. That's bullshit.
I'm sure that's why most of them are doing it, at least, because like I said, there are probably a few crazies in
Because like
Augie's
we went
chat who.
through, we kind of went through that already. They didn't start doing that until I came on the stream. And they started doing that while I was there. They all hate me. So it's not because they're on my side and they want to be like, we're great allies. We're doing spamming total tranny death to show that we're
You're right. Yeah,
yeah.
you're right there.
Yeah.
Um, I think. You don't. I guess you said you didn't want Smago on, but he really wants to come on because he has some stuff to talk about. Let me see here. Uh, you're sure you don't want him on? He says he wants to be
Yeah,
fair, but also
I
push back
think
on
I
claims.
should
Okay.
probably put a lid on this conversation and
All right.
but I really appreciated talking to you. I feel like this was really productive.
Of course, I like talking to you too. Like, I just want you to know these people, like, they aren't bad people. You guys just fundamentally disagree on a lot of things. And but in your hearts, in their hearts, they do not mean to actually hurt anybody. That is not what they want. That's how it is at
Right.
the end of the day.
I don't know how I feel. Again, the reason I went on the stream the other day was just to see how honest they were willing to be about their beliefs, because they fall back on being entertainers when you end up pushing them on it. But I don't think that they have to be hateful. Like, I'm sure like Augie, he might have a dog he loves very much and he treats that dog really great. I don't know if he has a dog. Just a random example.
Yeah, probably. You could use Nick. He loves dogs.
Yeah, or Nick. But a lot of
Nick
that
is
kind
the
of
dog.
rhetoric and spreading that kind of rhetoric, even if it's just out of ignorance, can still result in actual harm to people. Especially when you have the free speech position where you're not going to censor or moderate any of it when it's clearly directed at individual trans people. In my case, it was. And I'm sure if you were to ask Jalen has all of her own stories of how she's received this kind of treatment when interacting with the commentary community.
Yeah, I think that's sort of where that's where we go to the crossroads of, because this whole thing is, I think it sort of goes to, should you, like, how you should go about censoring your audience, and I think it's difficult to argue for that, because like in 1987, when Michael Jackson released "The Way You Make Me Feel," there wasn't like there wasn't a surge of teenage boys going into dark alleys and yelling at a bunch of women. Like, it's just entertainment to most people. So there will always be some people who you sort of use that as an excuse, put it in their pocket to do weird, crazy things. But most of the time, people just see it as entertainment. And those who don't already have those bad beliefs, and they don't, like, unless there's a clear, serious message there, they don't see it as serious.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should just both think about this, because you brought a lot of points to the table. I did too. We might never see eye to eye, but I think having open, productive conversation is a lot better than what happened the other day.
Of course. Although the other day was pretty fun to watch. I enjoyed it. But you are right that he probably just wanted to. I do believe, yeah, it's clear that he wanted to just make content out of it. But at least it was funny.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Colton.
Of course. Thank you a lot for having me on, and I mean that. Have a good day.
Bye.